Oh no, how can this be? What kind of secret is she hiding?
My name is Sarah Blackwood,
No, how
and
can this
3 months
be?
ago, I
What kind of
discovered something
secret
in
is
my
she
grandmother's
hiding?
attic that I was never supposed to find. A leather-bound diary, hidden inside a locked chest, written by my great-great-great-grandmother in 1847. The first entry seemed innocent enough, but by the third page, my hands were shaking. By the 10th page, I was crying, and by the final entry, I understood why my family had kept this secret buried for 177 years. What I'm about to tell you will sound impossible. You'll think I'm lying or exaggerating. But I have the diary, I have the proof, and what I discovered didn't just change how I saw my family's past, it changed everything I thought I knew about who I am. 3 people died because of what's written in these pages. One of them was my grandmother, and now that I've read it, I might be next. If you're just starting this story, I need you to hit that subscribe button right now because what you're about to hear is the most disturbing family secret I've ever encountered, and you won't want to miss a single detail. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is there, because this story gets darker with every minute. It started 6 months ago when my grandmother, Eleanor Blackwood, passed away at the age of 94 in her home in Savannah, Georgia. I was her only grandchild. My mother had died of cancer when I was 12, and my father had never been in the picture. Gran and I were close, or at least I thought we were. I'm 28 years old, working as a historical researcher at the University of Virginia. I specialize in 19th century American history, particularly the antebellum South. The irony of what I'm about to tell you is not lost on me. When Gran died, she left me everything. The house, her savings, her possessions. But she also left me a letter with specific instructions. The letter was with her lawyer, sealed, to be opened only after her death. When Mr. Henderson handed it to me at the reading of the will, his hands were shaking slightly. "Your grandmother was very specific about this," he said, his voice tight. "You're to open this alone, in her house, and you're to follow the instructions exactly." "Why all the secrecy?" I asked. He wouldn't meet my eyes. "I don't know the contents, Miss Blackwood, but your grandmother was troubled in her final months. She kept saying she needed to tell you the truth before it was too late." Too late for what? I wondered. That evening, I drove to Gran's Victorian house on Bull Street, a beautiful old home with wraparound porches and Spanish moss hanging from the oak trees. I'd spent every summer here as a child, running through the rooms, playing in the attic, listening to Gran's stories about our family history. She'd always been so proud of our lineage. The Blackwoods had been in Savannah since before the Civil War, prominent citizens, respected, wealthy. I sat in Gran's parlor and opened the letter with trembling fingers. "My dearest Sarah, if you're reading this, I'm finally at peace. But I cannot rest knowing I've kept the truth from you your entire life. The burden of our family secret has nearly destroyed me, and I will not pass it to you without giving you the choice to know. In the attic, behind the false wall in the northwest corner, you will find a locked chest. The key is taped under the third floorboard from the east window. Inside the chest is a diary that belonged to my great-grandmother, Constance Blackwood, written in 1847. Sarah, I need you to understand something before you read it. Everything you think you know about our family is a lie. Our name, our legacy, our very identity, all of it was built on something so terrible that it has haunted every generation since. I've tried to destroy the diary 3 times. I couldn't do it. Someone needs to know the truth. Someone needs to decide what to do with it. I'm sorry to burden you with this, but you're a historian. You seek truth. Perhaps you'll know what to do with ours. Read it alone. Trust no one until you've finished it. And forgive me. All my love, Gran." I read the letter twice, my heart pounding. What secret could be so terrible that my grandmother tried 3 times to destroy it? If you're hooked on this story, do me a favor right now and hit that like button. Drop a comment telling me what you think the secret is. This is just the beginning. I climbed the stairs to the attic as the sun was setting, casting long shadows through the house. I'd been up here countless times as a child, but suddenly it felt different, ominous. The attic was exactly as I remembered. Old furniture covered in white sheets, boxes of photographs, trunks full of vintage clothes. But now I was looking for something specific. The northwest corner, behind a false wall. It took me 20 minutes to find it. The wall looked solid, but when I pressed on a particular panel, it swung inward, revealing a small hidden space. Inside was a wooden chest, maybe 2 feet by 3 feet, covered in dust. My hands were shaking as I pried up the third floorboard from the east window. Sure enough, taped underneath was an old brass key. The lock on the chest was stiff from disuse, but the key turned. The lid creaked open. Inside was a single leather-bound book. The leather was cracked and worn, the pages yellowed with age. On the front, stamped in faded gold letters, "The Private Journal of Constance Adelaide Blackwood, 1847. I lifted it out carefully. It was heavier than I expected. I opened to the first page and began to read. January 1st, 1847, Savannah, Georgia. This diary is my confession, my testimony, and my warning. I write it knowing I may be damned for what I've done, but silence has become unbearable. If you are reading this, then I am dead, and perhaps it is time for the truth to be known. My name is Constance Adelaide Blackwood, though that is not the name I was born with. I am 32 years old. I am the wife of William Blackwood, one of the most prominent merchants in Savannah. We live in a grand house on Bull Street. We have 3 children. We are respected members of society. But everything they know about me is a lie. I stopped reading. My breath caught in my throat. I closed the diary and clutched it to my chest. Did I want to know this? Did I want to uncover whatever secret had been buried for 177 years? I thought of Gran's letter. Someone needs to know the truth. I opened the diary again and kept reading. I was born enslaved on a plantation in South Carolina. My given name was Ruth. I am black. And everything I have, my freedom, my children, my life, was built on a deception so complete that even my own husband does not know the truth. The room spun. I read the words again. I am black. My great-great-great-grandmother, Constance Blackwood, the woman whose portrait hung in Gran's hallway, with her pale skin and elegant dress, the woman I'd been told was from a fine Virginia family. She was black, and she'd been passing as white. Subscribe right now if you want to know what happens next. Comment below if you've ever discovered something about your family that changed everything. This story is about to get even more shocking. I spent the entire night reading the diary by flashlight in the attic. I couldn't stop. Every page revealed another layer of the elaborate deception that Constance had constructed. The story she told was both heartbreaking and astonishing. Constance, or Ruth, as she was originally named, had been born in 1815 on a cotton plantation in South Carolina. Her mother was an enslaved woman named Hannah. Her father was the plantation owner's son, Thomas Whitmore. Because of her mixed ancestry, Constance had very fair skin. Light enough, she wrote, that she could have been mistaken for a white woman in dim light. When she was 19, Thomas Whitmore, her father, though he never acknowledged it, died suddenly. In his will, he secretly freed Ruth and her mother, and left them a sum of money. But he couldn't publicly acknowledge them without causing scandal. Ruth's mother Hannah made a decision that would change everything. You can pass, she told me. Your skin is light. Your hair can be straightened. You speak well because you were allowed to listen to the family's lessons. You can have a life, Ruth. A real life. A free life. But Mama, I protested. I cannot abandon you. I cannot pretend to be something I'm not. You can, and you will, she said firmly. I will tell everyone I'm your servant. We'll go north. You'll take a new name. And you'll live free, the way I always wished I could. And that's exactly what they did. Ruth became Constance Adelaide Whitmore. She and Hannah, now posing as her maid, traveled to Richmond, Virginia. There, using the money from Thomas Whitmore's will, Constance established herself as a young widow from a Charleston family that had fallen on hard times. Her story was that her husband, a Mr. William Whitmore, had died of yellow fever, leaving her alone with just her loyal maid Hannah. The elaborate fiction worked. Society accepted her, and when she met William Blackwood, a wealthy Savannah merchant visiting Richmond on business, he fell in love with the beautiful, refined widow. They married in 1839. Hannah came with them to Savannah, still playing the role of Constance's devoted maid. No one suspected. William is a kind man, but he could never know the truth, Constance wrote. He would be ruined by association. His family would disown him. Our children would be considered tainted. In the eyes of society, one drop of black blood makes a person black no matter how white they appear. And so I live a lie. I am a white woman by day and a terrified imposter by night. I attend parties with the wives of slave owners. I nod politely when they discuss their property. I remain silent when they speak of black people as less than human. And I hate myself for it. But I have children now, 3 beautiful children who will never know what their mother truly is. I do this for them. I do this so they can have opportunities, freedom, respect, things that would be denied to them if the truth were known. I had to stop reading. I was crying so hard I couldn't see the pages. My great-great-great-grandmother had been passing as white to protect her children, to give them a life she never could have had. But there was more. So much more. Tell me in the comments right now, would you have done what Constance did? Would you have hidden your identity to protect your children? Drop your thoughts below. The next section of the diary was dated 1850, 3 years after the first entry. By this point, Constance and William had 4 children. They were prominent members of Savannah society. But then came the entry that made my blood run cold. April 15, 1850. I must record what happened today, though my hand shakes as I write. Hannah, my mother, my protector, my secret keeper, was arrested this morning. A slave catcher came to our door. He had a warrant. He claimed that Hannah was an escaped slave from a plantation in South Carolina, and that she'd been living as a free woman illegally for 11 years. William was confused. But Hannah has papers, he told the slave catcher, papers showing she was freed by her previous master. Forged, the slave catcher said. I have testimony from the plantation owner. This woman is property. She's coming with me. They took her. They put her in chains in front of our house, in front of our neighbors, in front of my children. And I could say nothing. I could do nothing. Because to defend her too vigorously would be to reveal our connection, to reveal the truth. William tried to intervene, tried to buy her freedom on my behalf. My wife is very attached to her maid, he explained. But the slave catcher refused. No amount of money will change what she is, he sneered. And then he looked at me, really looked at me, and I saw something in his eyes. Suspicion. He knows. I don't know how, but he knows. And if he knows, then it's only a matter of time before everyone knows. I flipped through the next few pages frantically. Constance's handwriting became more erratic, the entries more desperate. Hannah had been taken back to South Carolina and sold to a different plantation, a punishment for having escaped and impersonated a free woman. Constance was beside herself with grief and terror. Her mother was enslaved again, and there was nothing she could do without exposing herself. But then came the entry that changed everything. May 3, 1850. The slave catcher returned today. His name is Jeremiah Cole. He sat in my parlor and smiled at me with teeth like a wolf. Mrs. Blackwood, he said, I've been doing some research into your history. It's remarkable how little documentation exists about your family in Charleston. No records of your marriage to William Whitmore. No death certificate for your late husband. No record of your maiden name before marriage. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it would burst from my chest. Records were lost in a fire, I managed to say. It's not uncommon. No, he agreed. It's not uncommon, but it is interesting. Especially when paired with Hannah's insistence that you are her daughter. The room went silent. I could hear the clock ticking on the mantel. Hannah was clearly confused, I said. The poor woman has always been mentally unstable. It's why I kept her on, out of Christian charity. Is that so? He leaned back in his chair. Well, Mrs. Blackwood, I'm a reasonable man. I'm willing to forget everything I've heard. For a price. He was blackmailing her. Jeremiah Cole demanded $500 immediately, a fortune in 1850, and $100 per month going forward. In exchange, he would keep silent about his suspicions. Constance had no choice. She paid him. For 3 years, she paid him. She stole money from the household accounts. She sold jewelry. She did everything she could to keep him quiet. But then, in 1853, something happened. Hit that subscribe button right now because what happens next is absolutely chilling. Tell me in the comments if you think Constance should have just told the truth. October 12, 1853. It is done? Jeremiah Cole is dead, and I am the one who killed him. I gasped out loud, alone in the attic. He came to the house tonight, drunk and angry. William was away on business. The children were asleep. The other servants had the evening off. Cole demanded more money, double what I'd been paying. When I said I couldn't possibly provide that much, he laughed. Then I'll go to your husband, he said. I'll tell him what you really are. I'll tell the whole town. I'll see you hanged as a runaway slave and a fraud. Your children will be taken and sold. Everything you've built will crumble. Something inside me broke. 3 years of terror, of payments, of living in constant fear. It was too much. There was a letter opener on my desk. Silver, sharp, a gift from William on our anniversary. I picked it up, and before I could think, before I could stop myself, I drove it into his throat. He looked at me with such surprise. He gurgled, clutched at his neck, and fell. The blood spread across my Persian rug like a dark flower blooming. He died quickly, and I felt nothing but relief. Constance went on to describe how she disposed of the body. She wrapped Cole in the rug, dragged him to the cellar, and buried him beneath the earthen floor. No one will look for him. He was a drifter, a man with no family, no connections. He existed in the shadows, and that is where he will remain. I am a murderer now. I have committed the ultimate sin, but I do not regret it. I would do it again to protect my children, to protect my life. But I fear this is not the end. I fear that violence begets violence, that this secret will fester like a wound that never heals. The diary continued for several more years. Constance lived with her guilt, but seemed to function normally in society. William never suspected. The children grew up. Hannah died in 1856, still enslaved on that plantation in South Carolina. Constance received word through a former contact, but could not even attend her mother's burial without risking exposure. The final entry was dated 1862, during the Civil War. February 14, 1862. I am 47 years old. The war has turned everything upside down. William speaks of the Southern cause and the rights of states and the preservation of our way of life. I say nothing. I smile and nod. I roll bandages for wounded soldiers. But inside, I pray for the South to lose. I pray for slavery to end. I pray that my children, who do not know they have black ancestors, will live in a world where such lies are no longer necessary. This is my final entry. I don't know how much longer I will live, but I know this. I am taking this secret to my grave. My children must never know. Their children must never know. Let the Blackwoods be white. Let them be free. Let them be safe. But let whoever finds this diary know the truth. We are all descended from Ruth, a slave who refused to die in chains. Remember us. The diary ended there. I sat in the attic as dawn broke, holding the diary, tears streaming down my face. I was descended from an enslaved woman who had killed to protect her freedom. I was descended from a woman who had passed as white to give her children opportunities they would never have had otherwise. Everything I thought I knew about my identity was a lie. Or was it? I was still me. But I was also the great-great-great-granddaughter of Ruth, of Hannah, of women whose stories had been erased, whose blood ran through my veins even though society would never have acknowledged them. What was I supposed to do with this information? Comment below right now. What would you do if you discovered this about your own family? Keep reading because this story isn't over yet. I spent the next week in a daze. I went to work, I taught my classes, I graded papers, but my mind was consumed by the diary. I couldn't tell anyone. Not yet. I needed to verify it first. I needed to know if it was true. As a historian, I knew how to research. I started with the basics. I found Constance Blackwood's marriage record from 1839. I found the birth records of her 4 children. I found William Blackwood's business records. But when I tried to find information about Constance before her marriage, I hit a wall. No birth record, no family history, nothing. The story about her being a widow named Whitmore from Charleston, no evidence it was true. I searched for Jeremiah Cole, and that's when things got really strange. There was a missing person report filed in Savannah in 1853 for a man named Jeremiah Cole, a slave catcher and bounty hunter. He'd disappeared without a trace. The report noted that his horse and belongings were found abandoned near Bull Street, near my grandmother's house. I dug into the property records. The house on Bull Street had been built in 1842 by William Blackwood. It had been passed down through the family for generations. If Constance really had buried Cole in the cellar, he might still be there. I needed to know. I needed proof. That weekend, I hired a contractor under the pretense of wanting to renovate the cellar. I told him I wanted to level the floor and add proper flooring. "You sure?" he asked. "This is original earth floor. It's actually kind of a historical feature." "I'm sure," I said. The work began on Monday. I told the contractor I'd be working upstairs while he did his assessment. On Tuesday afternoon, he called me down to the cellar. His face was white. "Miss Blackwood," he said, his voice shaking, "I think you need to call the police." He'd found bones, human bones, wrapped in the remains of what had once been an expensive Persian rug. Subscribe right now if you want to know what happened next. This is where everything spirals out of control. Drop a comment telling me what you would have done. The police came. Then the forensic team. Then the medical examiner. Then the media. Within 48 hours, my grandmother's house was a crime scene, and I was at the center of a media firestorm. Human remains found in historic Savannah home, 170-year-old murder mystery unearthed, prominent family's dark secret exposed. The medical examiner confirmed that the bones were male, approximately 30 to 40 years old at time of death, and had been buried for approximately 150 to 200 years. Cause of death appeared to be a stab wound to the throat. The remains of the rug, though badly deteriorated, were analyzed. The pattern matched Persian rugs common in the 1850s. Everything Constance had written was true. She had killed Jeremiah Cole and buried him in the cellar. The police questioned me extensively. Where had I found the diary? How long had I known about the body? Had my grandmother known? I told them everything. I showed them the diary, Grand's letter, the hidden compartment in the attic. The detective in charge, a woman named Lieutenant Martinez, read portions of the diary with her eyes growing wider. This is incredible, she said. This is a historical document of immense significance. The story of a formerly enslaved woman passing as white, the murder of a blackmailer during the antebellum period. What happens now? I asked. Legally? Not much. The crime is well beyond any statute of limitations. Constance Blackwood is long dead. We'll close the case as a historical homicide. But Miss Blackwood, she looked at me seriously, you need to prepare yourself. This story is going to explode. Everyone's going to want to know about your family. She was right. Within days, reporters were camped outside the house. My phone rang constantly. Genealogy experts contacted me wanting to trace my family line. Publishers offered book deals. Documentary filmmakers wanted exclusive access. But the worst calls came from distant relatives, cousins I barely knew, second and third cousins, extended family members from various branches of the Blackwood family tree, and they were angry. How dare you expose our family like this? You're destroying our legacy. This is private family business. You had no right to tell anyone. One cousin, a prominent lawyer in Atlanta named Richard Blackwood, threatened to sue me for defamation of the family name. Your great-great-great-grandmother was a liar and a murderer, he said coldly, and you've made sure the whole world knows that we're descended from slaves. You've ruined us. That word, slaves, the way he said it, with such contempt, made my stomach turn. You mean we're descended from enslaved people? I corrected. People who were enslaved. Not slaves. They were human beings. Whatever, he spat. The point is, you've destroyed our reputation. The Blackwoods were a respected family. Now we're a joke. A scandal. But not everyone in the family felt that way. I received a call from my grandmother's sister, my great-aunt Helen, who was 89 years old and lived in Charleston. Sarah, dear, she said, her voice weak but clear. Your grandmother and I, we knew about the diary. Our mother told us before she died. She made us promise never to tell anyone. She said the secret had to die with our generation. Why didn't you destroy it? I asked. We tried. But every time we came close, something stopped us. It felt like we were killing Ruth all over again. Like we were saying her story didn't matter. She paused. Sarah, I think you did the right thing. Ruth deserves to be remembered. Hannah deserves to be remembered. They were brave women who survived unimaginable circumstances. But the family is furious, I said. Some of them are. The ones who care more about reputation than truth. But there are others, like me, who think it's time. Time for honesty. Time to acknowledge where we really came from. Tell me in the comments, do you think Sarah did the right thing by exposing the family secret? Or should some secrets stay buried? Hit that like button if this story is giving you chills. The media circus intensified. Historians from universities across the country contacted me. The diary was authenticated by experts as a genuine 19th century document. The handwriting was analyzed and confirmed to be consistent throughout, one person, writing over many years. But some people still didn't believe it. Some distant relatives insisted it was a hoax, that Constance had made it all up, that there was no way we could really be descended from an enslaved black woman. Look at us, they said. We're white. We've always been white. This is ridiculous. So I did something I'd been avoiding. Something I'd been terrified to do. I took a DNA test. I ordered 3 different tests from 3 different companies, just to be sure. I wanted irrefutable proof, one way or another. The results came back 6 weeks later, and they confirmed everything. My DNA showed approximately 18% sub-Saharan African ancestry. West African, specifically, the region where many enslaved people had been taken from. The percentage made sense. Ruth was mixed race, probably about 50% African ancestry. After generations of marrying white people, that percentage had been diluted. But it was still there, coded in my genes, undeniable proof of my connection to Ruth and Hannah. I was, genetically, a black woman, but I'd lived my entire life as white. I'd had all the privileges of whiteness. I'd never experienced racism. I'd never been discriminated against because of my race. What did that make me? I started doing research into racial identity, into the history of passing, into the complex legacy of mixed-race families in America. I learned that there were thousands of people like me, people who appeared white but had black ancestors, people whose families had passed for generations, people who carried the genetic legacy of slavery without knowing it. Some of those people, when they discovered the truth through DNA tests, embraced their black heritage. They started identifying as black or biracial. They connected with black communities. Others rejected it. They continued to identify as white, dismissing the DNA results as statistically insignificant. And others, like me, were caught in the middle, unsure what it meant, struggling with questions of identity and belonging. I reached out to a genealogist who specialized in African American family history. Her name was Dr. Kendra Washington, and she was a professor at Howard University. When we spoke on the phone, she was kind but direct. "Sarah, what you're experiencing is complicated. You've lived as a white woman your entire life. You've benefited from white privilege, but you also have black ancestors who survived slavery and made incredible sacrifices so their descendants could be free. So what am I?" I asked. "Am I white? Am I black? Am I both?" "Identity is complicated," Dr. Washington said. "Genetically, yes, you have African ancestry. Historically, yes, you're descended from enslaved people. But culturally and experientially, you were raised white. You can't suddenly claim black identity just because you found out about your DNA. That wouldn't be honest or respectful to people who've lived the black experience their whole lives. So what do? You honor Ruth and Hannah's story. You tell the truth about your family history. You acknowledge your complicated heritage. And you do the work to understand what that heritage means, not just for you, but for the broader context of American history. Subscribe right now if you're feeling the weight of this story. Comment below if you've ever questioned your own identity or family history. This is about to come to a shocking conclusion. 3 weeks after the DNA results came back, I received a call from Lieutenant Martinez, the detective who'd handled the case of Jeremiah Cole's remains. "Miss Blackwood, I need you to come to the station. There's something you need to see." When I arrived, she led me to a conference room where several folders were laid out on the table. "We've been doing additional research into the Cole case," she explained, "and we found something disturbing." She opened one of the folders. Inside were photocopies of old newspaper articles from the 1850s. "Jeremiah Cole wasn't just a slave catcher," Lieutenant Martinez said. "He was a serial killer." I felt the blood drain from my face. "What?" "We found reports of at least 7 murders attributed to a man matching Cole's description. Free black people, mostly. People living in northern states or people who'd purchased their freedom legally. Cole would accuse them of being escaped slaves, and when they tried to defend themselves or flee, he'd kill them and claim it was in the line of duty." She showed me another document. "He was particularly interested in people who were light-skinned and passing as white. There are at least 3 documented cases of people Cole blackmailed, people who paid him to keep their racial identities secret. 2 of them eventually disappeared. We believe Cole killed them to eliminate any evidence of his blackmail scheme." "So Constance," I couldn't finish the sentence. "Your great-great-great-grandmother killed a serial killer who was blackmailing her, and had likely killed other people in similar situations. In modern terms, it would probably be considered self-defense or defense of others. But she didn't know he was a killer. Maybe not explicitly, but she knew he was dangerous. She knew he'd ruined lives. And she knew he wasn't going to stop." Lieutenant Martinez looked at me seriously. "Sarah, I'm not saying murder is ever justified. But context matters. Your ancestor was living in a time and place where she had no legal recourse, no protection, no rights. She did what she felt she had to do to survive. I thought about Ruth, About Constance, making that split-second decision, 3 years of terror and blackmail culminating in one violent act. There's something else, Lieutenant Martinez said. She pulled out another folder. We've identified a living descendant of Hannah. What? How? DNA. We extracted DNA from the remains and ran it through the criminal database. We got a hit, not for Cole, but for a familial match. A woman named Grace Johnson, age 73, living in Charleston, South Carolina. A descendant of Hannah? Yes, through a different child. It turns out Hannah had a daughter before Ruth, a girl who was sold away from the plantation when she was very young. That daughter's descendants eventually made their way to Charleston. Grace Johnson is your distant cousin, Sarah. A real, biological connection to your great-great-great-great-great-grandmother Hannah. A week later, I was sitting in a small house in Charleston across from an elderly black woman who looked at me with a mixture of curiosity and wariness. Grace Johnson was a retired school teacher, a grandmother of 5, and a pillar of her community. When the police had contacted her about the DNA match, she'd been as shocked as I was. So you're Ruth's descendant, she said slowly, studying my face. Yes. And we're cousins. Very distant cousins. But still. Grace smiled slightly. You look white. I know. I've lived as white my whole life. I just found out about all of this a few months ago. And how does that feel? It was such a simple question, but it hit me hard. I started crying. I don't know. I feel like I've been living a lie my whole life, except I didn't know it was a lie. I feel guilty for all the privilege I've had. Privilege that Ruth and Hannah never got to have. I feel angry at my family for keeping this secret. I feel sad for all the ancestors I never knew about. I feel lost. Grace reached across the table and took my hand. Her skin was dark brown against my pale white skin, but we shared DNA. We shared blood. Child, identity is complicated. But what matters is what you do with the truth now that you know it. Ruth and Hannah fought to survive. They did what they had to do. You don't have to apologize for existing, but you do have to honor them, tell their story, make sure they're not forgotten. I'm trying, I said, but some of my family is furious with me for exposing the secret. Grace squeezed my hand. Some people would rather live with a comfortable lie than an uncomfortable truth. But the truth is the truth, whether we acknowledge it or not. And those women, Ruth, Hannah, they deserve to be remembered for who they really were, not who society forced them to pretend to be. Drop a comment right now telling me what you think of Grace's words. Are you still with me? Hit subscribe because the ending will leave you speechless. It's been 3 months since I found the diary, 3 months since my life turned upside down. The story has died down somewhat in the media, though I still get occasional interview requests. The diary is now housed at the Smithsonian's